Hello and welcome back to CBR MTG. My name is Angus Mackay. I'm joined here by Jacob Golding.
Hi.
And Andrew Vance.
Hello.
We are going into the top 4 of the Highlander National Championships at Cancon in Canberra. We have Tom Clift on the left playing Grixis Control and Anatoly Lightfoot playing Jeskai Mentor. Something that we've seen a lot this weekend was a bunch of control decks. Andrew, how do you feel about that?
Look, control's very powerful in Highlander at the moment. It's something that the committee, of which I'm a member, we try and keep all the archetypes sort of fair. Mm-hmm. So we are definitely looking at whether or not some of these control decks are perhaps too good in the format. Mm-hmm. It's a little bit.
They've definitely received a lot of points in the time.
Yeah. And it's a little bit hard to judge sometimes as our sample sizes are pretty small and sometimes it's just the decks people like to play.
Yeah, absolutely.
So...
on Tom's side, we'll explain the differences between the two.
Yep.
There's a mentality difference between the two, definitely. But in regards to the lists, on Tom Cliff's side, he's decided to go with a very heavy control version for his points with 1 point on Mana Drain and Force of Will, Snapcaster Mage, a Treasure Cruise, and then and Jace the Mind Sculptor, and he's also playing a Dig Through Time, so spreading a very wide net against a lot of the 1 and 2 pointed blue cards.
It's a pretty standard points configuration for
Definitely.
control decks and has been, I guess, for a while, really.
Yeah. For sure. We're seeing a very similar thing on Anatoly's side with the Force of Will and the Jace the Mind Sculptor and the Snapcaster Mage. However, Anatoly's decided to spend a little bit more money, maybe taking out that Time Walk out of his binder just to give it a use. But that's probably a good way to end the Wasteland as well, going for a land destruction package. However, it probably helps reference the different mentalities of the deck, where we call Grixis Control because it's very controlling. It likes to stop you doing things. Yeah, exactly. And then many instants, many sorceries, and then sort of tries to finish the game with a Curse of V-Click or some Delve Threats or maybe a Jace the Mind Sculptor, whereas Anatoly is he's playing what is tempo, essentially.
Yeah, absolutely. So Anatoly's deck is it's similar to a deck that Andrew Reid made top 8 with last year, which was Dr. Seuss, which is Red Blue Fish. Mm-hmm. But it's really it's playing a bunch of control threats. It's got standard control cards. It's got your Logic Knots, your Mana Leaks, your Cryptic Commands, and so on.
Sure.
But his goal is to put a lot of pressure on his opponent, protect the powerful threats he plays. And maybe at some point take several turns in a row just to finish them off. Mm-hmm. So while on the Kess pile side, as you said, you've got things like Vendilion, Clique, Tasiga, and Kess herself to finish the game with. And finishing the game is sort of an afterthought. Mm. You're going to do a pile of stuff, and at some point you're going to win the game somehow.
You stop your opponent first, then you win the game.
That's right.
Yeah, exactly.
And how exactly you do it is kind of irrelevant. Mm. On Anatoly's side, he's got more threats than the control decks play, but also very specific kinds of threats that take over the game on their own. So we've got things like Young Pyromancer and Monastery Mentor to generate a pile of tokens off your spells.
We just saw Goblin Rebel
Master, which can get in for a pile of damage if unanswered. Geist of St. Traft, which is a beautiful thing to play and then take 2 more turns in a row. And he's also got Snapcaster Mage and Flip Jace to abuse that Time Walk, and a Soulfire Grandmaster, which in round 1 I know in both games he took all of the turns in a row using that in his Time Walk.
We see Tom Cliff having a little read, which is definitely understandable. For anyone who doesn't know, Soulfire Grandmaster, a 1 and a white creature human monk from Fate Reforged, is a 2/2 with lifelink, and your instants and sorcery spells you control have lifelink.
Really cool card.
Yes, definitely. It has the ability of 2 blue-red hybrid. The next time you cast an instant spell or sorcery spell from your hand this turn, put that card into your hand instead of your graveyard as it resolves. that's a perfect That's a perfect sort of tempo card to be able to play. You know, just giving your lightning bolt that you're going to use to kill their Snapcaster Mage, giving a lifelink, getting a bit of life. You know, why the hell?
That's right. Turning your lightning bolt into a lightning helix, turning your lightning helix into sort of 2 lightning helixes. And also it means that as the game progresses, if your opponent doesn't have a lot going on, if you've got 5 mana, you can just go, I'm just going to lightning bolt you every turn for the rest of the game, and the rest of the game is not going to be a long time. Or, as I mentioned before, you can live the dream and get to 6 mana and cast Time Walk and put it back in your hand and start another turn, and just keep doing that until your opponent cries uncle.
That's combo.
That's a combo.
So definitely different mentalities coming out of the decks. There's definitely a recurring theme of sort of land hate or land disruption. Definitely the mana denial aspect of these control decks is a very important part to sort of stop any unfair magics that are happening on the other side of the table. But I think Anatoly's going a little bit deeper on that than our friend Tom Cliff, because he's going to be playing the Tectonic Edge, the Wasteland, and I suppose that's all.
He's also got a Stifle in his main deck, which
there we go.
He's often going to catch people on turn 1 or 2 when they go, I'm going to crack a fetch and cast this, and he's like, actually,
1 mana Stone Rain.
You're going to have a 1 mana Stone Rain and a bad time.
Oh my gosh, that's perfect.
Another card that Anatoly's playing that you see less of in the Kespile sort of decks is Logic Knot. So Logic Knot is it's 2 blue and X, and they've got to pay X extra mana for their spell to resolve. But it's got Delve. So because Tully's not pressuring his graveyard with Tasigur, with Tombstalker, with etc., he can make use of it as a resource to just say, all right, this is essentially an extra hard counter that eats some of the cards in my graveyard that I don't care about.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you're playing like a fetch land based, even land destruction based deck, you have no problem filling up your graveyard quick enough to play out that Delve threat. We're seeing Tom using that Snapcaster Mage as a way of just getting that Soulfire Grandmaster off the table, but we're turning the corner now. We have the mana drain. We have the 7 mana coming out of that Logic Knot, which is a huge benefit. But unfortunately, we don't have a lot of cards in our hands, so we might just play out this cantrip and play out this Wandering Fumarole and then pass the turn, unfortunately losing all that benefit. But, mana drain is just so powerful. I mean, that's got a point on it as well for obvious reasons.
Absolutely.
Because people are playing Counterspell in this format, so imagine how good a mana drain is, you know?
That's right. Like, you end the game pretty quickly. I mean, decks like Kespile are intending to make the game go long, but if you mana drain someone on turn 2 or 3 and you cast Tasigur without sacrificing a whole graveyard, you're so far ahead. It's just obscene.
Mana drain definitely worth the point that a lot of decks spend on it.
Saying for a very long time, this is a Jason Mindskull coming on the table, just going to help Anatoly get some of that card advantage back, really making it hard for Tom to come back from here, because he's the control deck, but he doesn't have as many cards in his hand as Anatoly does, being able to show off all those lands, the Celestial Colonnade and the Dak Faden that we saw before. This is going to help him sort of close out the game if he can.
Dig through those clumps.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
And I think just before that, you saw Tom asking Tolly if what he'd like to do with Jace was perhaps bounce his Snapcaster, which was not agreed to.
Unfortunately not. Now, Vance, I mean, you're a committee member that we mentioned before. I should have mentioned that earlier, of course, but you're if you don't mind me saying, an elder of the format. You're an alumni. You know, you've been here since the dawn of time. You've seen Blue Moon in its rise, and are we seeing the end of Blue Moon, or is this not something? For anyone who doesn't know, Blue Moon is a control deck that it's just red-blue, and it plays a lot of moons, using that mana denial to... it used to be the king of the format, the deck to beat, sorry, is probably
often
a better way to say it.
Some variant of Splinter Twin combo.
Yeah, there were a lot of people who were playing with Splinter Twin. Some people were playing with Time Vault instead. So there were quite a few people playing Blue Moon variants on the day. I think there was 6 or 5 people playing it out of a field of 63,
Yep.
which doesn't sound like a lot, but there was like 21 ofs
Yep.
on that list. And the only other deck that had more than it was Grixis Control, which had 8. But whereas Grixis Control converted 3 of its 8 into top 8 slots,
Yeah.
Blue Moon, I'm not sure got any.
No, it didn't.
So, it's on a bit of a downturn, which is, in some respects good because people don't like not being able to cast any of their spells for the rest of the game, which is often what Blood Moon and Back to Basics feel like.
Definitely a conversation of hot contention between the Highlander community.
Oh my, yes. But equally, we don't necessarily want to be in a position where we're exchanging one blue overlord for another. So we're keeping a close eye on decks like Grixis Control. I'm enjoying watching Anatoly's Jeskai deck as a variant that's different from the traditional very controlling list. So we'll see how that goes as well.
Yeah.
But they're always going to be good decks, and it is an eternal format.
Yeah,
and, And blue cards used to be quite a lot better than everything else.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially just in a singleton format, blue can even help round out a deck that doesn't really play blue. Like,
The mechanics of blue are good.
Yeah, correct.
Drawing
Well, and
cards and
particularly,
filtering cards.
what you're going to see in a lot of these lists is you'll see, Brainstorm, Ponder, Preordain, Gitaxian Probe. Some people are going as deep as cards like, I think it's Portent.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Legacy newcomer.
Yeah. And things like that help you sort of ameliorate the singleton nature of the format because you get to go, well, these 2 cards are actually a bit rubbish. I'll put them back on top of my library and shuffle them away because they're not good in this particular situation or this matchup.
Yeah. I possibly spoke out of turn. Looking at the archetype breakdown now, we have Grixis Control at 8 decks, Blue Moon at 5, with 3 of them being twins. So definitely still sitting up there in the most played decks, closely tied with Elves, Elf Ramp, and Elf D, and then Esper Control coming up there as well.
I do think maybe one thing which has contributed to the rise of Grixis is printings of things like Fatal Push and Kess in recent sets, and that is another thing which, as part of an eternal format, you're always getting new cards added. They don't always break through, but sometimes you'll get an excellent 1-mana removal spell of which there's not really that many that you can play.
I mean, in my view,
make a difference.
Fatal Push is very good, but it's not as format warping because, I mean, it's a better one black removal spell than any previous one, absolutely. But it's not, it's not worlds better. Whereas the things that do sometimes cause, little storms in the format are things like Kess and Titania, who is who are printed in these commander decks, so they don't ever have to go through standard. They're not legal in modern, and some of them are extremely spicy cards.
Nemesis, another one which was originally printed in commander decks.
Well, that's the benefit they have, is they don't have to worry about warping standard, which is what they really care about, and they can bring out these overpowered cards that are very hard to cast. Like, for example, Kess has just come out. This is in C17. For anyone who doesn't know, Kess, the Descent Mage, one Grixis, so 1 white, black, red, with flying at 3/4. During each of your turns, you may cast an instant or sorcery spell from your graveyard. If the card was cast this way, it would be put into your graveyard, exile it instead. So kind of like a snap on every one of your turns, giving your cards flashback.
It also doesn't target, which lets it get around things like Deathrite Shaman, which is something that is played quite frequently in Highlander.
And it also means things like if you're on your turn and you're attacking with Kess and your opponent tries to kill it, you can just go, I'm going to use this mana drain as my card for the turn. So it gives you a huge amount of flexibility and ridiculous quantities of card advantage if you can get it to stick.
Yeah, exactly. And we see the and speaking of spicy cards, the Jurien Rune Diver just hitting the dust from the aforementioned Fatal Push. These these are a lot of spicy cards coming out of this Jeskai list. But this Jurien Rune Diver is a legendary Merfolk wizard from one of the dual decks, and it says whenever you cast your second spell each turn, draw a card. Now, as a 2/3, this is a sort of another Delver threat. This is like this is similar to Legacy Delver, where you're just like you're putting down a young Peasy, a Jurien, you're putting down something small like that, and just having it take over the game because that's card advantage. Like it counts itself as well. So when you cast it, that if you cast another spell,
Cast
which
it,
you
get probe.
Yeah, exactly. Cast it, get probe, get a thing. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and that's exactly the sort of card that Tolly wants to be playing, where he can have like 1 or 2 threats in play, and then just get card advantage and protect them until the opponent runs out of the will to live. And, life points.
Yeah.
As we can see here, Tolly's been, slowly grinding Tom down. Tom's played a lot of really powerful spells. But
it seems to somewhat have stabilized at 2 points, but that Celestial Colonnade's not really going anywhere.
No. No, so the Celestial Colonnade's just sitting there waiting for, the coast to be clear.
Yeah, and Tom Wally's found kind of individual sources of card advantage, hasn't found a recurring engine like the Jace that Anatoly has in play, which is, continually getting him cards.
We have a DAC on the field at the moment. We do have the Jace, ending the thing. We saw a Cryptic Command coming out of Tom Cliffside, just bouncing the Colonnade. Like it's funny we're talking about
time.
This is just buying himself just a bit of time. Like he really has to work hard to stabilize. Being able to draw a card off the Cryptic was probably pretty good, but just the fact that he's going to be hoping that Anatoly doesn't 1-for-1 him, because now he's not in a position to be 1-for-1, because at any point Anatoly can just turn the corner and then that'll be it. That'll be lights out.
And the Dak Faden that Tolly's got in play at the moment means that he's got things like Mental Misstep. Their time has passed in the match. They're good, but you don't want them anymore. And he can just filter those out of his hand, draw extra lands, and
And we see Anatoly doing Tom doing the power play of seeing a Gitaxian Probe on the other side, and then concealing that information of that one card and just scooping it up. I think thinking that he possibly just can't get out of this. So as we go to sideboards, we have Tom Clift with Anger of the Gods, Arcane Laboratory, Damnation, Dismember, Duress, Energy Flux, Flusterstorm, Magma Spray, Nihil Spellbomb, Notion Thief, Null Rod, Pyroblast, Pyroclasm, Red Elemental Blast, Relic of Progenitus. Very, possibly you could say very generic cards coming out of this Grixis control sideboard. You have a manner of board wipes, and you have the Energy Flux that'll save you from some artifact hate, and the Null Rod to protect you, and then you've got the Pyroblast in the Red Elemental Blast that will probably come in as well.
Yeah, with a little bit of Graveyard Disruption in Niall's
just to sort of round it out. It seems like Anatoly is sort of thinking the same thing with the blasts. Definitely a good bring-in on both of their parts, but on Anatoly's side we have a blue Elemental Blast, Barrington Forge Tender, Condemn, Fiery Confluence, Flusterstorm, Grim Lavamancer, Negate, Pyroblast, Radiant Flames, Red Elemental Blast, Relic of Progenitus, Rest in Peace, Supreme Verdict, Vendalken Shackles, and Wear Tear. Now, a lot of them are they're pretty similar on each side. I mean, the only thing that I haven't recognized on that list being the Barrington Forge Tender, which is just a 1/1 Kithkin Wizard for 1 with protection from red, and allows you to sacrifice it to prevent all damage a red source of your choice would deal this turn.
So JP, John Paul Kelly, and I argued with Tolly for quite some time trying to get him to take that out of his sideboard. But it was apparently very good for him all weekend, including in the first round I mentioned earlier, where he
took all the
turns. What he won with was his opponent was on red-green and didn't have any green creatures in play.
Yep.
And Tolly had Barrington Forge Tender and attacked with it 20 times. So
hey, a fog that attacks is pretty good.
Yeah.
So I can definitely imagine Anatoly possibly considering bringing that one in. Maybe possibly a manner of the Condemn and definitely the blue Elemental Blast. Possibly even the Grim Lavamancer, just trying to go under him and get rid of some of his excess cards.
And I mean, he would also be bringing in the red blasts and just trying to side out some of his lower impact cards. So we could see Fire Ice was taken out. We couldn't see the rest of it because of the camera angle. But yeah, he'll just be trying to take out some of his cards that don't match up particularly well against what Tom's doing. So,
yeah, absolutely.
We might not see the Path to Exile, Spell Snare might not be as good as it is in some other matches, and that sort of thing. Electrolyze probably not that great.
Yeah, definitely the benefit of the three blasts that it was able to play was that they're just pretty much better than a lot of counter spells that he's going to be protecting out. He's taking out a Spell Snare to bring in a red blast. He's probably not pretty unhappy about that.
And he's got a red blast and a.
I saw a Jace and a Wasteland. Yeah,
Yeah.
There's definitely some cards, some good cards on both sides. These are both very good hands from our opponents. We also see a Pyroblast on Tom Cliff's side, so he's probably going to be...
Fiery Confluence?
And a Fiery Confluence and a Counterspell, so a very, very reactive hand coming from him, possibly just trying to slow down the first few turns.
I think the other card he just pulled to the front might have been Pyroclasm.
Yeah.
Okay, definitely a good bring-in, for
sure.
Yeah,
which is potentially very good against a lot of Tolly's. It kills Geist of Centraft, which is possibly the only thing Tom's got that actually kills it. And it kills, Monastery Mentor or a young Pyromancer and all their foolish little friends.
And it's probably going to be put to work against this Jace Prince Prodigy here.
Look, I'd say that's highly likely, unless it just gets red blasted.
Yeah, possibly. Like, I think you got to be super careful with those blasts. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this blast is 1 mana catch-all for nearly everything that Tom's going to care about. But, I mean, is Jace good enough? The good thing about these red blasts is that the blasts is that they do have the capability to destroy Jace once he flips. Like, he can change his mind later.
Yeah, Tom
absolutely.
Just figuring out which of the many answers he currently has in his hand he wants to use on the Jace.
Yeah.
And he does... he's got the luxury of being able to do that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And, an interesting thing about Highlander is, especially in control decks, is you have so many, a wide variety of answers to your opponent's threats. And
sometimes a good thing, sometimes a bad thing.
Yeah, exactly. Both the threats are incredibly varied and the answers you have to them.
Yeah, absolutely. We see this is a perfect answer. I mean, Jace hasn't had the ability to untap yet, and Tom Cliff's been able to play out this Abrade dealing 3 damage to Jace. Significantly better for him than the Red Blast. So
absolutely, and it lets him save the Pyroclasm for one of those go wide threats.
Absolutely, and this is something that sort of defines a good control player. We see the Jurian Rune Diver coming back, but on Tom Cliff's side, he's managing his resources. He's only got a specific number of answers. He wants them to be the best they possibly can be. So just being able to have that Abrade probably doesn't have any other use for the rest of this game. So,
so I mean, Tom doesn't know this, but Anatoly's got, I believe, literally 0 artifacts in his main deck, and none that he was going to sideboard in this match.
Yeah, for sure.
So
it's definitely a good play to have. And we see even on Anatoly's side, this is what we saw in game 1 where he smashed down his threat as hard as he could with the Rabble Master on turn 3, but had that 0 mana protection for it. And absolutely. The same thing has happened with this as well. We're seeing the Red Blast, which is what we were mentioning before, is something that needed to be held on to, as now it's just wasted because of a daze. This Jurian might hang around for a little bit longer.
Yeah, Anatoly unfortunately didn't get to draw a card of Jurian there because the daze has to happen before she enters play.
Yeah.
Because the Red Blast, although it can target her in either space, Tom's better off using it while she's on the stack.
Absolutely. And if I'm not mistaken, she doesn't see things that have happened before she's entered the battlefield.
That's right. She doesn't see things that have happened before she's entered the battlefield. So if she's
the second
spell, or the second spell happens while she's on the stack, she's just I don't know, nothing's happened that I care about.
Yeah. I didn't see nothing. A Fiery Confluence coming out of Tom's side. Just going 1, 2, 3, right? Choosing the 3 modes of deal 1 damage to each creature 3 times. So
Tom very determined that he doesn't want to see that Jurian. But now Dak Faden comes down while the shields are down. Until he gets to just furiously loot his way through his deck.
Planeswalker's being quite powerful, especially in these control matchups. I think I know, especially in the Grixis matchups, Ashiok has been one which has been talked about
a lot. Yeah,
very powerful way of landing a threat, which will probably win the game and is quite difficult to interact with.
Yeah, exactly.
Because they've only got 4 creatures in their whole deck that can attack for damage, plus Fiery Confluence can happily kill a Planeswalker. Most of the rest of their burn's going to struggle against a Planeswalker that's already on 4, or you're going to get a free 2-for-1.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, Dak could just run away with this game. Like, Dak has a lot of also like incidental benefits. Like, no one doesn't like filtering their cards because it's just like a good way to dig for what you need. But also, like, your opponent could play a Soul. Like, could be in a control deck that plays Soul Ring, and then you're like, oh well, I guess I'll take that. Like, I guess I'll take your Mox. It's the same sort of power
with all
of
of these
vintage.
blasts, even Dak's ultimate might come in handy in terms of being able to target something and steal it without killing it.
A very interesting line that Jacob is referring to is that on Pyroblast, on Red Elemental Blast, it says target a thing. If it's red, destroy it.
It's destroy target permanent if it is blue, or counter target spell if it is blue. So you can target anything.
Yeah, exactly.
It doesn't have to be blue. So unlike the Pyroblast and Hydroblast do require it. It is target blue spell.
Yeah, destroy target blue
permanent.
Yeah.
I believe the Elemental Blasts are the ones which work better with Dak.
Definitely, because for anyone who doesn't know, Dak's ultimate says when you target something, gain control of it.
Yep.
So you can go, I'll take that land, or I'll take this creature,
Maybe
I'll take that
Tasiga.
I'll take that Jace. Yeah, exactly.
So another interesting thing that just happened while we were discussing that. So Tom iced Tolly's Wasteland.
Yep.
A lot of players in that situation would just snap, crack off the Wasteland, destroy one of Tom's lands, prevent him from drawing a card. But Anatoly's playing very cautiously. He only had 4 lands at that time.
Yep.
He doesn't want to get in a position where he can't deploy the threats he wants to deploy. So he's just playing the long game. He's like, look, 1 card, don't care.
Yeah. And I mean, Tom's got a little bit of
drawing to a turn with the deck.
Yeah, absolutely.
Being able to cycle through them.
And I mean, we're seeing, I was just about to mention, but we're seeing it firsthand is that Tom has a little bit of land hate as well. So in this Dust Bowl, if he could... he might have had that in hand when he did it, and then he could turn off the Wasteland, force Anatoly to crack it, and then just go straight into Dust Bowling the rest of his lands out and just sort of gain control that way.
So Fact or Fiction coming down, I think?
Yeah, Fact or Fiction. There's a counterspell I don't recognise on the other side.
Counter Squall.
Counter Squall, of course.
The one that also makes your opponent lose a little bit of life on top of it. So we're seeing
a big counter war here.
Yeah, we're seeing very, very vintage style play where one thing goes on the stack and then all the counters pile on top of it.
But I don't think Anatoly is too unhappy about this now. He now gets a turn where Tom is basically tapped out, especially a colored mana. So he's able to find a threat of this stack. Or already had one in hand, then now is going to be a pretty good time to play one.
And Jace is a pretty good threat.
I think he agrees with you. Yeah, he's definitely thinking the same thing that you're thinking, being able to bounce this Tasiga back to Tom's hand. Now, if Tom doesn't, Tom's run out of blasts. So if he's not able to deal with these 2 Planeswalkers, they're just going to take over the game.
Yeah. So Anatoly is a big vintage player. He actually built this deck out of a shell of his vintage mentor list.
Sure.
And so he's very experienced at playing these sorts of counter wars.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like Anatoly, for those listening who don't know of him, is an old school Australian Magic player. He doesn't play as much anymore as he used to, having succumbed to house owning and that sort of thing.
Yeah, sure.
But he's been playing for nearly as long as Highlander for nearly as long as I have.
Yeah.
Used to be on the committee himself, and has won an Australian GP, top 8 several more, came second twice in a row.
Oh, wow.
So he's a very, very good control player. He's a very good player in general. And this is exactly the sort of deck that he, loves playing, where he gets to try and outthink his opponent.
And it's very, it's just amazing the way that this deck was able to out control the control player, but still has the capability to be the aggressive deck.
Oh, absolutely.
I like the type of control deck that I would play if I were to ever delve into control would be one that had the capability to just go, I'm going to be the aggro deck now, and then just like turn the corner with a Jurian Rune Diver or a Goblin Rabble Master. You know?
And he did have some games over the weekend where, he's casting a Geist's Draft on turn 3 and protecting it, and then on his following turn he's just casting Time Walk, bashing you for 12, removing whatever creatures you've got in play. Like, it's an incredibly, as you say, it's a deck that's incredibly capable of just turning the corner and doing whatever it wants pretty quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. Just deciding early on, and that takes a lot of skill, like from Anatoly as a Magic player, just being able to decide what type of deck he needs to play as soon as he sits down at the table,
Yeah, yep.
And we're seeing this poor Tasiga being bounced for the second time.
He's just not allowed to hang around.
This time
Mystic
of that
Confluence.
the Mystic Confluence.
Another new card which has made a bit of a splash in these blue control decks as kind of a second cryptic command fulfilling that role of an incredibly versatile control card which can refill your hand or counter an important spell and has a bunch of other utility.
We're seeing a Colligan's Command coming out of Tom's side, I think, with the discard and deal 2 damage, redirecting to Jace. Now that's he's probably pretty happy with that. Being able to get rid of a Brainstorm of all spells as well, like
a Brainstorm and a Brainstorm every turn. It's pretty good.
Yeah, exactly. So now Anatoly's pushed the Colonnade to the side. He is able to activate this card every turn, but he's definitely going through what spells he's played and what spells he thinks he might still have in his deck, thinking about which ways he can turn the corner here. But he's still got a bit of time. We've got the I think a Swords to Plowshares and a Negate in his hand. That's definitely going to slow Tom down, but he needs to do something. He needs to do something before Tom regains control of this game.
Yeah, the thing is though, Anatoly's got 3 or 4 cards in his hand to Tom's
2, I think. Yeah.
So he's up on cards.
One of them being Tasiga.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. He's up on cards. He's up on threats in play.
Yep.
Like, he's not in a bad position.
Yeah, absolutely.
And still, both players holding off on their ability to destroy each other's lands because they both need them more for their function of tapping for mana.
Yeah, exactly. It's
also, they're just unable to take their opponent off a specific color.
That's right. Neither of them can take the opponent off a specific color.
The value is lessened.
And in Tom's case, he just can't afford to take a turn to Dust Bowl, because Dust Bowl is 3 and tap and sacrifice one of your own lands. So it's costing you at least 4 lands. And we've seen before that Tom knows that if he taps out, Anatoly might do something completely ridiculous and kill him.
Yeah, exactly.
And Anatoly also probably considering that putting a land in his opponent's graveyard might just
cast Tasiga.
Yeah, exactly. Now we see Tom possibly pondering. He is taking that.
He is taking that
ball
turn.
line.
Shows what I know.
Yeah. No, I think it's reasonable. He's definitely like looking at his situation, going, I have this Pyroclasm in hand. I have a couple more lands for myself. Like, I can possibly just take this turn off. Hopefully try and make Anatoly use some of his resources. Probably not very confident that his Pyroclasm will resolve, considering every time he's tried to remove the threat the time after, Anatoly's been able to follow up with some kind of disruption.
Say Spell Snare there.
Yep, Spell Snare taking out that Snapcaster Mage. Yeah. Definitely a good use of your last bit of mana, just stopping another threat hitting the table, causing more card interactions.
Yeah, but it's also from Anatoly's point of view, he's now baited the last mana and another card out of Tom's hand. So he's in a position where, again, Tom's got nothing he can do unless he's got a Force of Will or something in his hand.
Yeah.
And
Gush.
so Anatoly's
Absolutely
maneuvered this
perfect.
Gush.
Yeah.
And
such a good time to be casting Gush right now. They're probably deciding, because Anatoly said floating blue, and then he puts a dice on the table, and Tom's like, what? Because we're actually doing the Monastery token as well. So
that's right.
I mean, this is fantastic. Tom's got extra mana. He's been able to make his land drop again, so it's essentially put one land back in your hand, you know, but like he gets the extra mana, he's drawn the extra cards. Like this is the perfect time for
Gush
him.
is quite a powerful magic.
He's
got Ajani Vengeant.
Vengeant, yes.
Which can keep
Tap
one of
down
Tom's
lands.
lands tapped.
Yeah.
Which might put Tolly in a position where he can potentially wasteland him off a colour for a turn.
Mm-hmm.
And if that's not good enough, he can just start Lightning Helixing him.
Yeah. Ajani, as we mentioned in this format, we played some weird cards today, but Ajani's a great card. We just don't often see any constructive play come out of Ajani. But Ajani Vengeant is 2 red white for an Ajani Planeswalker. Starts off with 3 loyalty. It's got the +1 ability of target permanent doesn't untap during its controller's next untap step. As Vance mentioned before, its -2 is deal 3 damage to target creature or player and you gain 3 life, aka Lightning Helix. And his -7 is destroy all lands target player controls.
Which was actually activated in the quarterfinals against Aiden Frisch. Anatoly. Yeah, it was a really grindy matchup between those two. Aiden on Grixis control.
As well,
similarly.
Long day for Anatoly.
Yeah, definitely. But yeah, he was just able to defend the Ajani from Aiden's answers and ended up blowing up all of the lands.
That's incredible.
Yeah, I mean, Ajani is an incredible threat in these control matchups because taking your opponent off a mana is often quite good. You can prevent them from having double blue or double black at various times.
Tapping an idiot in an aggro matchup as well.
Tapping a creature so they can't run in and attack Ajani. And in a control mirror, if you ever get to that ultimate, the game's over.
Yeah. Especially in the control mirror. Anatoly's probably going to try and use this as his win con for the game. Like, he's almost ready to ultimate Dak, which is probably not very inclined to do because he's getting so much value from ticking up. Exactly.
He might ultimate in a couple of turns when it's going to stick around, but at the moment, he'd rather just keep being able to filter his cards.
Yeah, absolutely. As we see
seen here.
Yes, exactly. So he's going to be activating Dak's uptick ability, as we've seen many times throughout this game, drawing 2 cards and discarding 2 cards. Anatoly having a very large amount of cards in his hand at this point, so late in the game. He's managed to...
graveyard.
Yes.
That is a giant graveyard.
I believe at this point the graveyard has gone much larger than the deck itself at this point.
Yeah, which is not too surprising given that for the last, 10 turns? Every turn he's drawn 2 cards and discarded 2 cards.
Yeah, exactly.
His filtering has just been magnificent. Here we see
the
Geist of St. Traft. Which is another one of those. Which is another one of those threats that can just, if it's left unattended, just clocks your opponent for 6 repeatedly and is a very, very quick way to end the game.
That's the facial expression that goes along with the Geist is almost exactly what Tom Clift is doing right now, where you're rubbing your temples, going, looking at the pyroclasm in his exile, going,
Well, that's right.
He's had a bit of a rub.
Because particularly against control decks, Geist's got the advantage that it's got hexproof, so the only option to kill it most of the time is to block it.
Yeah.
And as mentioned earlier, the total number of creatures in Tom's deck is 5.
Yeah.
One of which is an O2.
Yeah.
So, now Tom's in a very serious problem where if this Tasica dies, he's just going to get killed by this Geist.
Especially with the 3 or 4 cards that Anatoly has in hand, he's probably thinking yes, all I have to do is get rid of the Tasica, or even not do anything, because Tasica's not going to swing. There's no way that Tasica's
can't afford to swing.
Yeah. Tom needs to use this Tasica just to stop the Geist from swinging. So now he can tick up his Ajani. Yeah. Now he can tick up his Dak.
And again, the power of these Planeswalkers just sitting in play turn after turn, growing, and Tom being unable to establish enough of a board presence to threaten or pressure either one of them.
I mean, Tasica can't afford to swing, but he also can't afford not to, because if he doesn't and he says go here, Anatole is just going to be, sweet, Tasica never gets to untap again because Ajani's going to keep him tapped.
Yeah, exactly, and then he's going to swing in hard.
Game is almost immediately over.
We see that this red elemental blast staying in Tom's graveyard for the longest time, surviving 2 delves, Anatoly giving him the dig through time as opposed to the red blast, because he's just not going to be able to cast it.
Yeah.
The problem with having what is only 2 delve spells.
Oh boy.
Oh, my apologies. 3 delve
Treasure
spells.
Cruise.
Being able to flip over that treasure cruise to show your opponent, hey, I also cannot cast this spell. Anatoly's having a bit of a laugh. This is where it's getting late in the night. It's probably, I think it's about 9 or 10 o'clock at this point. Like, we're coming into the finals. We've been playing Magic for 9 hours a day. Tom looks at his hand. He looks at his graveyard and goes, ah! Shows them the 2 delve threats that he cannot play.
Yeah.
Well, and that's because he's had to cast that Tasker, 4 times?
I think this is the 3rd
times?
time. Yeah.
It's one of the problems that these Grixis decks do face sometimes is your delve spells put a huge amount of pressure on your graveyard.
That's why they don't play Logic Knot, for example.
That's right. That's why they can't play cards like Logic Knot.
Yeah.
That's why a lot of them don't play Gomag Angler or Tombstalker, no matter how good they are, because they just know that they can't.
Yeah. I mean, it's like... It's not hugely likely that you'll have to cast your Tasker 3 times at a turn, but it's not unlikely. You know, it's like it's happened.
It clearly happens, yeah.
Yeah. That's why we see these Grixis control players and the also rising in popularity, the straight blue-black variety of the control deck playing Mental Note and Thought Scour, just trying to fill up your graveyard as well, like as you're going, just so you can turn on your delve threats earlier.
That's something that's a lot easier in a format like Modern, where you can play 4 of each.
Yeah, exactly.
4 of Thought Scour.
No one knows what a Mental Note is, but at least they know what a Thought Scour is. That's something like that, you know.
And so we've got Tasker cracking into a Ajani, and Anatoly's like, I don't care.
Yeah. He's like, okay, well...
I won't cast a one-sided Armageddon next turn, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. Well, at least Tom agrees with you on the aspect of having to swing, just because Ajani's just going to keep ticking up from here on out.
We've got a DAC emblem in play now.
Oh my gosh.
Which is very exciting.
Dreams can truly come true.
And I'm not sure what Anatoly's got in his deck, but... I mean, he could still have, Lightning Bolts or Lightning Helix in there, which will take control of that Tasker.
Yeah.
The Pyroblast mentioned earlier, which I don't think we've seen.
I think we've seen both blasts out of both plays.
Yeah.
Okay. Look, it's been a long game.
Yeah, absolutely. He still has a Flusterstorm and a mana leak in his hand, so just keeping up that small amount of mana will be all he needs to kind of just protect this huge pile of threats that Tom is having to face.
Well, and I think Tom's now dead on board to that Geist.
Yes, he'll be dead to the Geist, so he has to pull something out. Here's the Thought Scour, the Mental Note that we mentioned before.
Fatal Push there being milled as well.
Yeah, the Fatal Push not being exactly a good card to draw, so he's probably pretty happy to be able to Thought Scour that away.
It kills an Angel token for a turn.
Yeah, sure. We might be able to see a Delve threat come back out. But thankfully, the Thought Scour doing work, as mentioned before. But we're running out of blue mana, so we're not going to be able to cast... we're definitely not going to be able to cast both Delve draw cards this turn, but we might be able to see the... he has to pull something out. What removal do we have left? Tasker's out. This is a Collective Brutality, possibly even at this point just gaining life. If he has a spare land in hand or something, he might want to... there's definitely no lands in hand, but if he might want to get...
I wouldn't be surprised if he got rid of either the Dig or the Cruise, because he's not casting them both this game.
Yeah, absolutely. He has enough mana to cast Dig next turn. If he discards a card, he might be able to cast a Treasure Cruise in the near future, but it's possibly just too greedy.
Yeah, so he's discarding the Treasure Cruise.
So choose mode 1, which is look at the hand and take an instant or sorcery. Ooh, here we go. Double checking that DAC emblem. We've dealt 1 damage to Tasker, 1 damage to face.
Yeah.
And we're going to take that Tasker home to our parents' house for dinner.
Yeah. And that
After
2 life
bouncing
is
it
not going to be
many
long enough.
times. Yeah.
So he was hoping that 2 life would, buy him a turn against the Geistus and Draft. But against Geist and Tasker, it's not doing anything.
Yeah. We're seeing the Collective Brutality resolving now. Just seeing a bunch of counter spells. Yeah.
Young Pyromancer and 2
And
lands.
you've got to imagine that
and
this
the
game is
as
over.
well. Yeah. It's not looking good for Tom. With Anatoly already up a game, and this being the semi-finals, Tom's really probably feeling the pressure right now.
Yeah.
Still, I still very much love the thought of keeping the Red Blast still in the graveyard, just in case, just in case.
Just in case.
Sending the message.
Exactly. I mean, this Damnation is fantastic, but it's just too late.
Yeah.
He just doesn't have. You can't get
You
the mana to
can't
cast it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. He extends the hand.
And Handshake goes out. Anatoly's into the final. So in the final, he'll be playing against
Dylan Brown on 4-color Yidris,
which is a very exciting deck to play against.
Yeah, we'll have some of the brewers of this deck come in and talk on that one, because this is a deck that's the love child of a few people in Canberra. So it'd be nice to be able to go deep into it and see how Anatoly can see if he can protect his title in the finals. So.
And you can see here that Tom's been handed his prize, which is a tropical island, which is very nice.
Yeah, very nice thing to finish off the day for him being able to get that tropical island. Thank you so much again for joining us. Please stay tuned for the finals with Anatoly Lightfoot versus Dylan Brown. Stay tuned.